Hi everyone, LJ Ganaga here from LJ Realties, and today I'm accompanied by
Francesca Sgambetterra.
Today we're going to do a follow-up to the last video when talking about new construction, but this is going to be more of a step-by-step guide of how we actually break it down. So starting off with step one, choosing your project.
Right, so as David mentioned in the last video, it's really important to look at the developer, the area, the timeline, and all various aspects related to the project. So once you sat down and you've given your real estate agent some sort of criteria, we'll be able to scour the market for all these new projects and sort of present to you the information packet in the brochure. Once you pick one that's sort of up your alley, we kind of move into the second step and meet with the developer.
The second phase of that is obviously going to be choosing your unit. So what's important to you for this particular unit inside this building?
So it's something to keep in mind that with that, when you choose your unit, I always look at the floor that it's on, the orientation, so whether it's north facing, south facing, the exposure of the sun. Along with that, you might want to keep in mind sort of the outdoor space. So is there a balcony? Isn't there one? And I think those really important characteristics that really help for resale and for you and your enjoyment of your unit.
To add to that, I would just add two little details. The first one is square footages. Developers are experts in making square footages look really, really large. However, they're always pitching you a gross square footage. The difference between gross and net is that gross includes really the exterior walls essentially. So it's a general plan of everything, and it does not deduct any of the closets, any of the wall space, anything in between that. We typically in resale describe properties based on the net square footage. So what's the actual livable space? So you have to make sure that you're talking kind of apples to apples or oranges to oranges. The second thing that you have to look out for that is the balconies. Some developers will kind of pitch their balcony square footage included in the total space. So a unit might seem very large on paper, but I want to make sure that you're not going to be disappointed with that. The second aside to add to when looking at orientations and whatnot is the lot next to you already built up? Is it something that they can build on top of? Do we know what's going to be their kind of impermanence, or is it the historic and whatnot? So make sure that you have an understanding of what's currently there, what can be there, and is this something that might be demolished and built up?
I think it's also important to note that certain facets are a little bit more expensive. So if you're on a corner unit, you have typically more windows and more exposure and a better view, and that's something that comes at a premium versus a unit of similar size and layout that would be in the middle of the building. I also would want to note that sometimes when you pick your unit, you have the ability to customize within. All of this comes as an additional cost, but you have a little bit of playroom because the property has not been built yet. So you can play a little bit with the interior walls and move things around to fit your lifestyle a little better.
I think this brings us to the third phase now. And the third phase really comes down to paperwork, documentation, and beginning of delays.
So typically speaking, you will sit down with your real estate agent, and the developer's representative. And once you've picked a unit, you go through the entire preliminary contract, which is sort of the promise to purchase for a new construction. Going through that, it sort of outlines who the developer are, who you is, what the expected delivery date, and sort of what unit you're planning on purchasing, and all of that financial timeline schedule.
So that brings us to kind of the first typical 10 to 15 day delay, which is where we start off with getting a general mortgage approval for this property, which again, the real final is only going to come closer to delivery, but it's understanding that you usually are going to have to give an initial deposit, maybe $5,000 to $10,000 to lock up this unit during your due diligence phase, if you will. And then after that, it's the analysis of the actual deposit structure. So the balance of that first deposit will typically be due after that initial due diligence. And then you'll have the structure of the next 5, 10, whatever it is, kind of down payment wise over the next few 3, 6, 12-month period, if you will. From there, it's going to bring us to the actual delays of construction. Now, Francesca, tell me a little bit more about that.
So typically construction, let's say they give you a date of delivery as of March. You can expect that there's going to be delays afterwards of anywhere from 3 to 6 months. With COVID having the delays in labor and in material, we're seeing people deliver their units much more closer to 6 months than they are to the 3-month delay that we typically expect. So that's something that you want to calculate in either your budget or your timeline, whether it be staying at home with your parents or renting out a short-term rental that will allow you a month to month to sort of play with that delivery date.
I'd say it's super important to ensure that you're flexible. When looking at new developments, you cannot be rigid. If you're somebody who gets really stressed out about a delay or somebody being late, this is not the avenue for you to go through. You want to make sure that you are able to extend your rental, find another short-term rental, go home, have options available to you. Might be a nice time to rent chalet, spend a few months up north or in the eastern townships, but make sure that you are flexible and that this isn't going to ruin your plans, because I have yet to see a development deliver on time. So I can't wait for the day that happens. But until then, make sure that you're flexible. What would be the next phase?
Well, at this point, we've signed the preliminary contract, we've given the deposit, we've gone through your initial mortgage approval, and this is kind of more the fun part. You get to choose your finishes. So this is where you go into the showroom, you speak to the correct person in point of contact, and pick and choose the exact finishes and style that you want for your new home.
From there, this brings us to the final phase as far as I'm concerned, which is the actual delivery. So the really cool part about delivery is doing the inspection of the unit. And this isn't your classic inspection where you need necessarily an inspector to verify everything. Because you're getting a brand new warranty on this building, a lot of that stuff's going to be covered. But it's really inspecting for defects. Is there problems in the paint? Is there chip marks? Was there a crack on the quartz or any materials that you have? So it's really kind of taking an in-depth analysis, inch by inch of the unit, of things that can be fixed by the developer and should be fixed prior to you receiving the unit, so that you're not responsible for any of these things. I recommend you bring along your favorite friend or family member who is the most detail-oriented or analytical person to really scope the scene out inch by inch. We've typically gone back to the developer with a list from 1 to 5 items that need to be corrected by them for any of our clients at this inspection. So the more eyes available that day, the better, because this is a huge part of really getting the product that you were promised and that you're going to be happy with. At this point, the next delay that we sometimes encounter is the common areas. Common areas usually take a little bit longer to get finished because they don't want to do that while all the construction's going on. They want to make sure that everything's kind of finished before they start working on these things. So make sure that you have that in mind. Don't start planning pool parties and barbecues right away because you probably won't have access to those things. So that's the final delay to consider. Francesca, do you have any closing remarks?
I would just say with the delay on the common areas, typically you'll see the landscaping, the envelope of the building going up last. And with some new constructions, you can ask the developer to maybe deliver your unit last to sort of eliminate you having to experience as much as the delays. And I think for people who are maybe working from home, this might be the best option for you. If your developer lets you, it lets you make sure that you're working in a quiet environment that's not on a construction site.
Thank you so much for watching. We look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.